We're going to take you on to our wide receiver picks. And we realize that most of the time wide receiver picks are pretty cut and dried as to who's going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But it rarely turns out in the statistics at the end of the season that those guys are the top 5 picks. So you really can pick some sleepers. This is a position where sleepers come out very high.
Especially after your draft is over, we've noticed that pretty much every year there's 1 or 2 guys that don't even get drafted in the draft. They turn out to be top 20 wide receivers. Last year's example was Marcus Colston.
A couple of years ago we had Anquan Boldin. We realized that it's very important to get on these guys at the end of week 1 or week 2 when they really break out. Show that they really have something to prove throughout the year. So Jeff, you want to take us through your top 10 wide receiver picks?
Gladly. At number 10, I have PJ Houshmandzadeh. At number 9, Marcus Colston. Number 8, Lee Evans. Number 7, Marvin Harrison. Number 6, Torrey Holt. Number 5, Reggie Wayne. At 4, I have Roy Williams. At 3, Terrell Owens. At 2, Steve Smith. And my top receiver this year is Chad Johnson. Ocho Cinco. Jason?
At number 10, I have PJ Houshmandzadeh. Number 9, Marcus Colston. Number 8, Javon Walker. 7, Terrell Owens. 6, Steve Smith. 5, Roy Williams. 4, Larry Fitzgerald. 3, Marvin Harrison. 2, Torrey Holt. And Jeff, I agree with you. I have as my number 1 wide receiver, Chad Johnson of the Cincinnati Bengals. Jeff, I noticed that you have 2 sets of teammate wide receivers in your list of top 10. You have Houshmandzadeh, Chad Johnson, and you have Marvin Harrison and Reggie Wayne. Can you explain those picks and why you feel like they have enough balls to make both of them successful fantasy players?
Yes, well, first of all, the Indianapolis and the Cincinnati offenses are both obviously top 3 offenses in the NFL. That's gonna happen this year. So for me, picking both Marvin Harrison and Reggie Wayne, along with PJ Houshmandzadeh and Chad Johnson, I don't think it's too much of a stretch that each of these guys can get 10 touchdowns apiece. And this game is all about touchdowns. I think these teams are going to produce. I think they have the best 2 quarterbacks in the league. And there's no doubt in my mind that these are going to be top 10 receivers, all 4 of them, by year's end.
They're both very pass-happy offenses, to be sure. But as we saw at the end of last year, Indianapolis realized that it needed to have a ball control offense in order to win the Super Bowl. Do you feel like Peyton Manning is going to be able to spread enough balls around to both Harrison and Wayne to make them both worthwhile top 10 picks?
Yeah, I believe so. And I think that with the die in there, they don't want to just run the ball. A die is their horse, but they don't want to overload them. And I think that they're going to pass the ball a little more this year than they did last year. Now, they're going to include a die in the passing game, but I think that they're going to pass the ball more than they did last year. And I think that's going to benefit Reggie Wayne and Harrison. And I noticed that Reggie Wayne wasn't even in your top 10 list. Can you explain that to me?
Sure. I'm very high on Joseph Addai, and I have him as one of my top 5 running backs. I feel like he is going to produce in the way of touchdowns, and I feel like Marvin Harrison is still the number 1 wide receiver threat for Peyton Manning, and I feel like that'll take away from Reggie Wayne's production. That's really the only reason I have him as not a top 10 pick of mine this year.
I can see that, and that's a good explanation.
It really is my belief in Addai that is taken away from my belief in Reggie Wayne.
Okay, fair enough. Now we're going to go on to our sleeper picks for this year at wide receiver. Jason, why don't you give us your 2 sleepers for this upcoming season?
Very good. My 2 sleepers this year are rookie wide receiver from Detroit, Calvin Johnson, and Darrell Jackson, who has moved from Seattle to San Francisco. I feel like a change of scenery could do him good, and if he can form a relationship with quarterback Alex Smith, that they could be a dynamic duo in this league.
If Jackson can stay off the training table, then I can see your pick.
And can avoid the dropsies like he has in his reputation.
He is a fantastic receiver, so
sure is.
I understand that pick. My two sleeper picks this year, number 1, Santonio Holmes from the Pittsburgh Steelers. I believe that the second-year receiver is going to have a breakout year. He's going to surpass Mr. Hines Ward as the top receiver in the Pittsburgh passing game. And I think he's in line for a 10 to 12 touchdown year, possibly over 1,000 yards. I think that he's going to flourish. My second sleeper pick is Devery Henderson in New Orleans. He's the number 2 receiver from Drew Brees. Very pass-happy offense down there. He had some spectacular catches last year, some deep bombs. And I think he could benefit from more coverage towards Marcus Colston's side to free up his game. I think he could be a nice sleeper pick.
Yeah, Colston really was such a surprise last year that it took some defenses a while to realize the threat that he was, and to realize that Drew Brees really did see him as their number 1 guy. So you're right, defenses should shift more towards him at the beginning of the season than they did last year.
And Jason, I think that's a big thing to think about in the big picture of picking fantasy players, especially receivers. When you see a team possibly focusing on a different receiver, someone that just came out a year or 2 before and had a fantastic season, you might want to look to the other side of the field to see if there's a talented guy over there that might be overlooked a little bit, that might have a breakout season this year. So I think Devery Henderson is someone that can benefit from that. And same with Santonio Holmes.
But we cannot stress the importance again of watching the waiver wire very early in the season, weeks 1 and 2.
And definitely weeks 1 and 2, not beyond that, because they will be taken. That's a guarantee, so just be careful with that.
And if you're in an auction league where you have to bid for players, don't be afraid to bid a lot, because these guys can prove to be worth a lot throughout the season.
Now, we're each selecting 2 players we think will drop this season. Jason, why don't you give us your 2 picks for 2 players you think will drop?
Sure. 2 players I feel will drop are Hines Ward of the Pittsburgh Steelers and Anquan Boldin. I feel like he'll drop out of the top 15, top 20. The changes made down there will not benefit him at all.
So you don't like the new Ken Wisenhunt system? We're bringing Russ Grimm down there. You think it's going to be a more run-happy offense?
They're going to try to make it more run-happy. I don't know if they have horses for it, but they're certainly going to make an effort to be able to run the ball down there.
Well, you know what? I actually agree with you. We made these picks independently, and Anquan Boldin is also one of my players that will drop this year. Based on the same reasoning, I think it's going to be a different system. Larry Fitzgerald is the top guy down there, and I believe that Boldin's going to have some problems because of the system they run. My second person that's going to drop this year is Donald Driver. I think the Green Bay Packer offense is just going downhill. Mr. Brett Favre is on his last legs. The emergence of Greg Jennings last year as a solid number 2 option is going to give Driver less and less receptions, less touchdowns, and he's no longer going to be a top 10 to 15 player in my mind.
Very good. No conclusion there. I ran out of tape.
Did you really?
Yeah. Mine stopped in the